I'm Jacob Hoerner, and I run Jacob Hoerner Galleries in Melbourne, Victoria, and I'm here today with James Makin of James Makin Gallery. How are you today, James?
Yeah, good, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. So you and I are both contemporary art gallerists based in Melbourne.
Yeah, I prefer the word dealer, mate.
Oh, dealer.
See,
okay.
last time I checked the dictionary, gallerist isn't a word.
That's true, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a fancy art term, I guess,
Yeah,
and
well,
an inside description.
Art dealer, you know.
Okay, so we'll start with that definition of our roles. So maybe that's the best way to start today. Maybe you can explain, as both of us who produce exhibitions on a regular basis, what's involved in running an art gallery and representing artists.
Yeah, well, one way I like to describe it is being married to about 20 different people at once.
Okay.
Yeah, basically because each art, we're dealing with a product. Yes, the artwork is a product, but behind the product is of course an artist, which is a human, and each individual we deal with has their own personal needs, wants and desires, and of course our aim is to meet all of those as best we can. We essentially act as agent for the vendor in a sort of transactional purpose. We are, most art dealers work on commission on a consignment basis, so essentially I've been in the game about 15 years. I've had my galleries now, and I was in the auction houses prior to that. Auction houses are a different beast, of course. We can come back there. But running a gallery essentially is we're the sort of the caveat between the artist's work in the studio and the collector. I'm trying to join the dots. Basically, I've got my artists over here, my artwork, and I've got my collectors or potential buyers of art over here, and I'm trying to say, hey, you might like this and you might like that. But essentially we're event managers, we're small business owners, we're graphic designers, we're photographers, we're doing accounting, we're sort of artist liaison, networking. The range of skills an art dealer should, in my opinion, have is pretty broad. Of course, you know, the best way to learn is by making a mistake. And essentially what we do is, of course, some people do. I tend to like to visit the artist studio. And you obviously, as I said, they're obviously people getting to know the artist, and you have a rapport with the artist. You visit the studio in the lead up to a scheduled exhibition, or generally you might, prior to that, I would find an artist whose work I admire and who I like as a person, and then we would have a conversation about representation. I think you mentioned representation. What that entails essentially is, as I said, our agent for the vendor. We become their exclusive agent. Locally in Australia, representation tends to be statewide jurisdiction, but that's probably a more old-fashioned way to look at it these days due to the lack of population in the country, although geographically big. The market's shifting more towards national representation. Globally, this is quite common. You know, you may have your American dealer and your British dealer and your European dealer, and you may have a gallery in each major location, and within that country they have a primary dealer who will look after secondary tier galleries. So in Australia, an example of that is I manage the artists in Melbourne and I would organise a show for them in Sydney or Brisbane. So it is my role to do that. So I take an artist on, we represent, we have a gentleman's agreement. Obviously there is some black and white, pen and paper involved in that, and then the aim is to select a group of work or a series of works, painting, sculpture, whatever they work in, and then to take the work into the gallery. Of course, as a gallery owner, the concept is you need a physical bricks and mortar gallery. But again, these days that's been challenged as well. The classic old white boxes, due to high rent predominantly, this is a global phenomenon, is a lot of people are now looking, especially with the advent of social media, Instagram, buying online, people are spending less time coming to the gallery and more time looking online. So,
well, that's a little bit like what I've sort of established in the last 2.5 years. I mean,
yeah, you've got a global model yourself.
We've known each other for a long time through the industry and through sort of knowing each other in the art world generally. But yes, my more recent shift has been away from that bricks and mortar model.
Well, it frees you up as well. I mean, you were running exhibitions in Berlin for most of last year, if I remember.
That's right, and yes, it was a deliberate decision from my side of things to lift up the anchor, so to speak, and challenge my artists, challenge my audience, provide in a way just new ways of looking at the business. So in relation to the business of artists producing work and what we would describe ourselves, I think, is commercial galleries. We don't fit into a, there's a few different strata. Maybe you could sort of expand a little bit on that, James, in terms of the way in which you've got different tiers in the art world.
Yeah, look, some people don't like the word commercial gallery. I think commercialisation is a nasty word or something. I heard a term once that they don't sell artwork, they place artwork.
Yeah.
But really when it comes down to it is, our role is to provide an income, a source of income for artists. We are there to sell it as a commercial enterprise. The aim is the business is for profit, so obviously the artist can make a decent living and have a professional career as a full-time artist. And of course the gallery owner can, provide for themselves and family if they have one, or essentially, run the gallery well so then they can take on more artists, or you could take on, say, higher risk artists, say emerging artists, versus, say, your senior artists where the price points are different. But the gallery model, a commercial model, there are also in Australia, in Melbourne in particular, we have a lot of these. New York around, over in Brooklyn, or some of the more sort of edgier suburbs, and trying to think of maybe Shoreditch in London, or Berlin itself actually is a great example, where you have what we call in Australia artist-run initiatives, or ARIs, where they run on the smell of an oily rag. Usually it's upstairs, down a corridor, or in a garage. It's not a highly, it's not an architecturally designed gallery space with polished concrete and a professional lighting system. So that's what I've got. It's just just a room, a space where young artists, usually the space is, a common example is, an artist might lease a warehouse, chop the space up and have a whole lot of bunch of artist studios there, and then they have a little communal zone where they can just show their works. Artists at the beginning of their career, say post-uni if they studied, are trying to just get their work out into the universe.
And those sorts of spaces play a super important role. I mean, my experience is that they're really incubators for a lot of
it's
artists.
a talent pool, yeah.
And that's
where
where
dealers will go and have a sticky beak, go and sniff around, the ARIs, and that's where you find the raw talent. Then you might say, hey, so-and-so, come over here and I'll come to your studio and maybe we should look at, you should come and join my gallery.
So I guess we're trying to explain a little bit of the mechanics of the art world, and I guess the audience that we're speaking to today will be a mixture of people that actually do know these basics, and there'll be some people that this is new information for. So I guess it's hard for us to cover everyone's sort of level of knowledge in this discussion, but I guess one of the other sort of questions I'd like to sort of get you to respond to is, or maybe more of a comment from me that you can reply to, is that it is a long-term game. This is a relationship, like you said, there's multiple sort of individual relationships you have with each of these artists. How does that develop over time? I mean, is that, it's a core part of the sort of building up of an artist's career. It's their CV and it's this level of experience on court, so to speak. Maybe you could sort of describe a little bit more on that front.
Yeah, it's a time game, you're right. It's a long game. I mean, some artists' career will spike rapidly out of art school, but you could say possibly throughout a life career of an artist, say, I don't know, 50, 70 years, however long they live, assuming they keep their marbles and, don't kill themselves somehow or get killed. You may have, say, three big career spikes, and then you have the troughs in the middle. And one would be you're the latest hot young talent out of art school or out of one of these ARIs I mentioned, where it was like, oh wow, so-and-so is doing something really interesting and it's fresh and energising. Your works are still very, price point wise, might be in 3 figures or maybe low 4 figures. But you're really energetic, and you have the first couple of shows, they're gritty, they're energetic, and your family and friends are supporting you, and you're off and racing.
Yep.
A gallery, quite often, some galleries will take and support early career artists due to their, say, financial model. Some galleries aren't structured to be able, they can't afford to support due to they can't sell enough works to cover the rent, for argument's sake. So some galleries will only sell or handle top, senior artists or mid to senior career artists, and that might be just through the basis of they've got, bigger space, rent, down the
established clientele base,
but also just their overheads of running the business. So you've got the first spike of an artist in a career, and that might last for a few years, and then there'll be a lull where it's just business as usual. They're now maybe represented by a major gallery, maybe 2 galleries, enter a few prizes or awards, might have a commission here and there. That could go for 5 to 10 years. And then, you know, so just say for argument's sake, timeline-wise, the artist's fresh out of art school in their early 20s. So that's your first spike. Then maybe in your mid-30s, you've got another spike where you've been going, now you can say you've got a decade behind you. You know, your CV is building, you've had a few, the gallery that represents you has been successful in having a few institutions or major collections, such as in Australia, the regional galleries, you know, the Ballarat Art Gallery, National Gallery of Victoria, examples like that, or the more significant private collections. An example could be in, everyone's probably heard, well not everyone, but I'm assuming most people have heard of Hoerner, David Wash, our gambling art lover in Tassie. So maybe someone like him has acquired a work. So you've got a few runs on the board of your CV. And then you sort of, you know, a decade or so down the track, and then you might win a major award, or you might get your first mid-career survey, which is an exhibition in a non-commercial entity.
A museum
show,
or,
yeah.
Or a university
something
gallery.
Or you might get a show overseas, you know, you know, you've done a residency in Berlin, you had a show in New York, and so something significant has happened. So then you have a second spike in your career, and everyone gets back on you, and your prices, you will surge again, you'll start to sell more again, you have another run. In Australia, one could say winning the Archibald Prize would be a pretty good example of that. The Archibald being the national, the biggest award for portrait painting at the New South Wales Art Gallery annually. What is it, 50, 70,000 now, I think, if you win. So it's not a bad day at the office. And then, of course, you know, so you've got your mid-career spike. And now, as I said, you've gone from an emerging or early career artist, 10, 15 years, then you're a mid-career artist. Mid-career lasts, it's like this never-ending story. Mid-career until someone actually says they're old, and then they're senior.
Yep.
So you're probably mid-career until your 70s, or, you know, maybe 60s, I reckon. And then it's like, well, they're a senior artist. Now, senior artists, again, now the market can get a little dark, whereas like, oh, they might fall off the tree or die soon. Maybe we should start acquiring a few works from, you know, an investment side of things, or now that they've been going for 30, 40 years, they've become an artist of significant note. Obviously, time in the game, they've managed to just survive. That's a huge tick. There might be a major book on their work. They may have had a couple of museum shows. As I said earlier, the CV has been now built out. There might be 10, 15, 20 major institutions nationally, internationally that have collected their work. They've probably had 30, 40 solo exhibitions, solo shows being what I would put on in my gallery. Group shows, and their CV, rather than being, you know, a half page, now it's like 6 or 8 pages long. They've got weight, they've got pedigree, there is provenance, there is history behind them. So of course that supports the weight and the value. You know, fine art should also, you know, non-commercially actually inherit, you know, they're contributing to the cultural capital or the currency of the country.
So it's not as...
But it's a long game. I'm talking, and yes. This is 50 years,
of course,
Jake, or more, as I was saying. So it's anyone that gets into this, I think in any business probably, and I'm an art dealer. Don't profess to be in any other business. You know, it's a mug's game if you think you're going to get in it quick, get in and get out. It's not going to happen. It's a long game. It's a lifetime. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about Picasso, literally just the other day, and he had this big show in, I think it was London, in 1932. And by this time, Picasso was born in the 1890s or 80s. So the guy's 49, 50. He's already regarded as pretty much the #1 artist in the world. He's the man. And if memory serves, the Great Depression kicked off in 1928. Not the best time in the world. Apparently, so this guy's the king, and he sold one work at this show. Like one, you know. So it's a time game, is what I'm saying. Now Picasso obviously went on to live somewhat longer than that period, and as a lot of people will know, he is regarded very highly now, and his paintings probably a decent Picasso these days will set you back anywhere from 50 to 200 million US. But my point is it's a long game. It is very long, it's a slow business, it's slow and steady. Anything that goes up fast will generally come down fast, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think that gives me a good intro to discussing the ways in which art is an investment as well as being something that people will buy, sort of in a sense, I guess you could delineate between purchasing from the heart and purchasing from the head.
For love or money.
For love or money. And so there is a lot of merit, and I think a lot of people, in a general sense, will look at their art collection with great pride, and it's an aesthetic thing. They derive a lot of value out of it in those sorts of ways. But there is a side to it as an asset in a broad portfolio. If you're talking about people who come into the art market itself, maybe you could just sort of expand on that in the way in which it's not really like sort of a stock market. It's not a fluctuating, frameworked industry. I think I've spoken to you in the past, it sort of has a little bit more to do with real estate and things to do with how you have actual data. We were just talking about CVs and museum collections and stuff like that. So the question might be, is collecting art an unusual investment activity, or has this been sort of going on time immemorial? Like, is this, how do you see that, James?
There's a lot to absorb there, but I guess basically, I mean, look, in my opinion, as an art dealer and not a financial advisor, but in my opinion, and this can be, a lot of this is a public record, for many years, art has been and can be proven to be a significant investment as an asset class. One could say a more volatile asset class. It doesn't pay dividends like some stocks. It's a capital growth. So it's a long game. Bricks and mortar could be an example. But if you look over time, and one can do their homework, and I believe I think it was in the 70s, the British Rail Pension Fund was a fantastic documented example of how an art collection was acquired for a certain sum, and over a period of time it was just, sat there and looked good, and then when it was sold, it was proven to be the return on investment was fantastic. And this, I'm sure, 20 minutes on Google, I'll dig it up for you. But I mean, if you look at people tend to buy art as they love it. They want something on the house, above the couch, above the bed, or this just beautiful things. They're decorative. I mean, to say art is decorative is almost like, he's speaking badly, but art is decorative. It's a beautiful object. But yes, you might buy something and then, 10 years later, your taste has changed. Or you moved house and it just doesn't fit in the new house. That's a common one I get a lot. And then they want to sell the work. There are certain avenues to do acquisition or to sell the work. But before I get to that, to go back to, I think, seeking the right advice and doing your homework, yes, I will say, art, and we can pull up some at a later time, maybe drill into some examples. Where art is a fantastic investment and has been proven to be so. You see auction houses, great, the public record. So you can see, the painting by, so-and-so, I used Picasso before, may have sold for, a couple of $1,000s in the gallery the first time, and then 50 years later, we're talking millions of dollars here.
Well, I just interject with probably the most well-known Australian example is the acquisition of Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles.
Yeah.
Gough Whitlam was the Prime Minister at the time, and prior...
Was it 1.9 he paid, I think?
It was something in the 1 million mark.
And everyone lost their mind. It went totally off the deep end. Waste of money, what are you doing?
Considered to be absolutely madness. and whether or not you like Jackson Pollock's style of abstract expressionism and really get what he was doing. Yeah. And I've stood in front of a lot of his work, and it takes a little bit of time, but you do see what's going on.
You either like it or you don't,
But regardless of that, the valuation of Blue Poles over the period of time since the 70s when that was purchased to
77 or something like that.
To what it is today is probably one of Australia's greatest investments.
Yeah, I think you could be pretty safe in saying that if Blue Poles hit the market, you'd probably clock. Well, what was it? The Da Vinci Salvatore Mundi got, what was that, 495 million last year. That's gone to Qatar. There were Cézanne's card players a year or two ago. I think they got 250 mil for that. Mm-hmm. These are, rock star pieces by rock star artists. So I think you're pretty... what was the last big Pollock hit the market? I think we're talking over 150 million easily.
Yeah.
But Blue Poles is considered it's his seminal work.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ones he's done. So you could probably, tack another 50, 100 mil. I mean, we're talking big round numbers here,
Yeah, so not everyone's Jackson Pollock, and not everyone was smart enough to invest in that artist in the early career.
That's like not every stock goes up either. I mean,
but isn't that part of the enjoyment that collectors often have? They can split across a number of blue chip artists, established artists, career artists that have really proven themselves over a long time. You also mentioned those other tiers of artists mid-career. You can really see that they've actually got some runs on the board, and will they continue to sell? Will they reach that sort of retrospective level and really accrue a lot of value? And then you've got that other element of the really speculative end, which is the emerging arts. The younger artists, and
you might see some great percentage gains in the younger artists, but there's small biggies. But then the blue chips, the percentage gains might be less, but they're bigger numbers. Yeah, look. As I said, look on.
So that's quite enjoyable from a collector's perspective.
Enjoyable.
I mean, you've got to, if you've got a serious interest in, the visual arts in that heart sense, or that interest in the visual arts in the financial art market sense, there's a lot of pleasure to be derived in spreading that. Let's say you allocate a certain amount of your personal wealth, or in the terms of a corporation or a private enterprise, having allocated a certain amount of money as a diverse portfolio of investments.
Look, it's like in anything, you can't crystal ball the future. It's buyer beware. Someone is providing professional advice, but they're just like saying, well, this is my opinion. And you take that information on board, you do with it what you will.
And I guess something...
I mean, if I've got sort of cut you off there, so I get clients that, let's be honest, they're spending a bit more than lunch money. Now everyone's concept of the cost of lunch is different. But for a lot of people, that I find if it's over about 5,000, they're spending a bit more than lunch money. They generally want to know, will they see it again? Now this is interesting because a lot of people get into the art, they go, oh, investing in art, it's all, every artist is going to make zillions. What's a false truth? We're talking about a very small percentage of artists that will actually have a significant financial return on their career, because you've got the hold time, transactional costs associated with the acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. But having said that, someone comes to me and says, oh, I want to buy a piece by John Smith or whatever, and it might be $15,000 or $20,000. Well, that's no small amount of money. Now, if you think of the average person and things they acquire through their life, you've got the biggest thing is generally going to be your house. Now, real estate's going to do what it's going to do. And then the next biggest or most expensive single object they might acquire through their life might be a car. Then, they may have a boat or something. But then if you come down from that, we're talking into household objects now. The big couch, the big dining table, the big TV.
I have to say though, those types of assets, a car or a couch...
Well, you're not going to see your money back on any of those.
No, that's right. As soon as you buy it, it's gone down in value.
Exactly. It's out the window. You're not even going to pretend to try and get it back. But people come into the gallery and they think the same amount, like big couch, $5,000. So they buy the couch, they're not going to see a cent, whatever. But they come and they 5,000, they instantly go, oh, but this artist is going to go up, and you've got to sort of hold your horses there. You buy it because you like it. If you like it, great. If you don't. But if they want to have a conversation about investing in art, well, it's a different conversation to have, because we want to remove aesthetics or emotion. Mm-hmm. Now, it's usually a very emotional purchase. You want to remove those things from the conversation. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty. We talk about where the artist has come from, the track record, CV, things like that. And there's a very detailed conversation because we are researching and we're providing information.
These are assets in terms of artworks that are purchased as investments that accrue value. They don't depreciate on purchasing. And
of course, there are many artists that
there is this other aspect too, in sense the sort of the purchase price. That let's put a figure out there of $15,000, and at the time it seems quite a significant amount of money, but that work might be in your family or in your personal collection or in your corporate collection for a period of 20 years or something. So each year that this sort of this work of art is enjoyed and retained, we discuss the ways in which that artist will then continue to practice and continue to sort of expand their levels of experience and all sorts of things like that. And then you have this opportunity, if things have sort of, all of the ducks have lined up, that you will be able to potentially realise that investment. And really over a long-term period of time, the outlay at first may have seemed quite a lot, but then really, if you bring in all those other factors, you've got yourself really quite a solid asset. And especially if, I think there's a really good example, which John Kelly, the cows painter. Now, for those who are not aware of his work,
he's not going to like that. Cow painter.
Well, he is known for the works.
Yeah, there's
that
the big
he
cow on
did.
the tree down in the docklands, and
Yeah. So, sorry, pardon me, John. But look, his for people who don't know his work,
it's his most iconic imagery.
It's his most iconic imagery.
Little diplomatic. Sorry, John.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll edit that out. No, but his work when he was sort of first producing works in Melbourne. Personal anecdote is that my mother was friends with him and thought to buy a John Kelly. Now, we're a little bit upset that we didn't, because John Kelly's work has exponentially increased in value. He's a good example. What are some of the other examples in Australian art that have really succeeded?
I mean, I like to speak of things that are in public record, because it's not a matter of my opinion. It's like we just look it up in the book or online these days. There used to be these great books I used to collect every year, the Australian Art Sales Digest. Remember those? I used to have every single one of them. Was all online now, so
Yep.
books are getting recycled. I've got a couple of them, but they were really nice because you get encyclopedic. John Kelly, whoever, look it up, and then you can see their auction records. And I used to say, so I used to work when I worked in the auction houses. If you're a private individual and you're looking to sell something, you've sort of got two avenues in Australia. One is you go to auction, or two, you find a gallery owner or a dealer that handles private treaty sales. And then, of course, the work is given to the third party to sell for you. But an example of, when I worked in the auction houses, I'm trying to think of some good examples of. There's and I'm also trying to think, what the artists might work. But there's a great artist, Tim Storia, and I remember when I was in the auction house. This beautiful painting of his. It was about 90 by 180 centimetres, just classic, iconic, burning fire, just a really beautiful example. So it was on the cover of the catalogue because it was such a great painting. So of course, being on the cover of the auction catalogue, everyone was like, "Oh, that's going to go well." And if memory serves, and I know I can look this up, I think it sold for about 30,000 or something, 35,000. This was in 2000, 2001, that's about when I was working there. And that was a good product. Everyone was like, and it sold well. Like I say, with auctions, like real estate, you have an estimate, high, low, and it sort of went seated around the top end of the estimate, I think, from memory. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's fantastic, what a great result." I'm pretty sure now if you wanted to buy a story at a gallery, you'd be looking at about 180,000, I'd say, 150,000 maybe, for the same type, subject matter size painting. So that's not bad. Keeping in mind that an auction house you could classically call a resale market, and therefore low, and obviously a little bit lesser, and the gallery being a primary market. But I think that's not a bad increase. But I mean, it's not like Tim's paintings have been about 150K for about a decade. Like they've been, significantly higher. His prices shot up, drastically. He was in high demand. So that's an example of, when if you go back about 30 years, they're probably less than that, actually, maybe 25 years, yeah, give or take. John Olsen, who is a very highly regarded artist, you could buy beautiful Olsen for about 15,000, 20,000. These days it's 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. But so primary market to primary, gallery to gallery. John's still with us. He's 90-ish. I think he was 90 earlier this year, actually. Numerous books now on Olsen. So I mean, there's some really significant increases in the value. I mean, they've bolted a zero on the back. But that's not every artist.
Well,
there are, for as many as like this that have gone up, there's probably 10 times as many that have just disappeared into the ether. I think it's interesting if you pull out an art magazine from the 80s or the 70s and you flip to the ads. Who are they? And then this is, of course, the rock star for the gallery. They're advertising that artist. Never heard of them, never heard of them, never heard of them, never heard of them. Oh, there's someone. So there's so many artists, it's a tough game. It's a long game, and we'll struggle to survive. But to come back to the question you're asking about art for investment, for the ones that do very well, it has been proven globally that on obviously getting the right advice, art is and can be a fantastic asset class and investment. Some of the great industrialists of the States, and it's not a new phenomenon. You look at the wealthy families globally forever, all the collections, Guggenheim, the Guggenheim museums. These guys were buying art, turn of the last century. John Paul Getty, the Getty Museum, both there in LA or Guggenheim's or around other places. Look at some of the royal families, some of the European families that have those Rembrandts and the masterpieces. They're smart people. They're hanging on to these things not only because they're amazing, but because what it is these artists and the artworks they have in their collection mark history, mark a point in time in history, because the artist has contributed to the cultural value of that particular country or region of the world that they were from. And in their collection, these people have acquired, just like you might acquire great furniture or tapestries or books, these are objects, tangible items that can be looked at and come from a particular point in human history. And they're unique objects, they can't be replicated.
Yes, they're like manuscripts, really.
It is, so you look at a work from the Renaissance. So we all know the Renaissance is a certain period in time. Pop art culture, to mention Picasso, abstract, the Cubist periods. They mark points in history, socioeconomic, wealth and development, political disrupt, or all sorts of things going on. So that's why you can attribute so much value to certain artists because of how they have affected, or had their little piece to play in affecting the world. And I think, back locally here, we could look at, say, the classic iconic image of the Ned Kelly, Sid Nolan. I mean, those works are priceless from the National Gallery in Canberra, and it's become an iconic image.
It defines us as
a people. At a point in time, with the bank robberies, the gold rush year, it's a point in history. It's marking time. So, and I think Blue Poles marks an interesting point in American culture and pop, the art history, pop culture. So that's why, over time, some of these artworks have, and artists, I could say, and their work can have a significant value attributed to them.
Yeah. Maybe just before we wrap up, I just wanted to sort of switch
sure.
the topic slightly, and something that I've not really experienced myself because I've been involved in running galleries and going to galleries all my life and all that sort of thing, is that quite a lot of people find it intimidating to walk into galleries and to get involved.
I hate that.
And isn't it such a important
there's
part
quite a lot
of
of galleries. I'm 6'4", okay, I'm not a small person, I take up a little bit of space. And I go into some galleries and you get this idiot, you get the person with the black hair and the eyeballs peering over the desk, and they'd look you up and down and see if, the Lambo's parked out the front, and they want to know if you've got a Hublot watch or something on the wrist. They're checking for the brand names, and they're massively intimidating. It's like, guys, I run my own gallery. You don't put me up and down. It's like, I'm not going to come there. I'm not going to buy anything, but at least just, galleries, art is for everyone. It's culture. I should be able to come along there without the pressure of, should, I buy something, or am I worth 10 million before I step in the door?
In Australia, it's a slightly less sharp market. I mean,
but there are so many galleries that just overdo the intimidation. They're massively making art elitist. And if you're not wealthy, you're not even welcome in the front door. And it's appalling. It's old-fashioned. I think, thankfully, I've been around a little while now. There's a lot of younger gallery owners of our own generation. They're doing the exact opposite. They're welcoming. Exhibition opening is a bit more of a party, like on a Friday night. You can meet the artist. Even the body language of the gallery owner. Like, at my gallery we have the flat desk. We've sort of got that open plan situation going in the front purely, so it's like, hey, how you doing when you come in? We're here, welcome. We take school groups on, education, we have talks and forums, and because we are trying to educate the market and involve it, as opposed to, like you said, so many people, and I've got friends myself, they'll say, oh, I was going to go to a gallery, but it just looked, it's just really intimidating. I'll never go to an art gallery, because I don't have $20,000 to spend on art. And it's like,
but in one way or another, maybe just to expand on those sorts of concepts, galleries have a personality, really. That they're quite unique personalities. I mean, there's trends in the market. There's trends in terms of the way in which gallerists approach what they're doing. But really, there's if you are going into galleries that are intimidating, you might bathe in that. It might be exactly what you're after.
Yeah, it could be a thing.
On other people's radars might be the galleries that they can actually get educated and sort of learn a bit more about the artist individually, the gallery and the stable, how that all pieces together. And really that enriches the experience. And so I think what my experience has been is that what usually happens is that collectors will find a particular gallery with a particular style that serves as a filter for them. So they're busy with their day-to-day living and their family obligations and things like that. And what's great is if somebody has locked in on a gallery, they like the eye of the dealer, they trust that person to...
We have a rapport.
They have the rapport, and that builds up over time.
You get on well with each other, you speak
yeah.
the same language. You might have a mutual interest in, I don't know, cars or something, you know, some book or fashion or whatever. So yeah, you've had conversation when you've gone into the gallery, you've got to meet the gallery curator.
So it's not monolithic.
Or the director.
This notion that the art world is a monolithic beast is really not an accurate way to sort of look at it. It's a much more complex industry. There are different tiers. We talked about how, you know, at the Blue Poles, Jackson Pollock, Picasso, who are stratospheric, established historical figures. That's one end. I mean, if you are in the business of that level of investment, that's one thing. But then there are all sorts of other levels within it. They all have their role to play, and it is like an ecosystem, and that's how I personally enjoy, you know, chatting with you on air, at a restaurant or whatever. We can really get stuck into this sort of stuff because there's just so much to enjoy. And
I mean, people just need to realise that they can just go out to galleries. I think it is, most galleries, I said, don't derive or require traffic flow, but it's, you know, on a weekend, it's actually a really nice thing to do. Just go to a gallery, just grab a coffee, check it out. And I think, yeah, if you're looking to start collecting art or educate yourself on art, that's more important to do that first. You go to the gallery and, like I say, do the rounds. You know, use Instagram or Google or whatever you're going to do to find out where they are. Because some galleries love to be hard to find. It's like that classic Melbourne thing, you know, no sign or down a lane.
Yep.
But some are easier to find. Then, yeah, you work out. And of course, as I said, back to the very beginning of our conversation, the galleries have exclusive representation of certain artists. So artist A is not necessarily going to be in gallery B. Artist A is in just the one gallery. So you're going to have to visit lots of galleries to find lots of different artists to acquire your taste. Like, you don't go to the suit shop to buy your sports shoes, you know, you've got to go to the sports shop to buy sports. So you work out what you need. So, and you go in different galleries, then you find, you know, you're into abstraction or you're into figurative art. Well, which galleries handle that? And then, you know, it's a journey. It's a long, enjoyable journey. We haven't even touched on art fairs, but art fairs can be a great way. It's like a trade fair. Can be a great way to get started, because you go to an art. They just had the Melbourne Art Fair the other week, and Sydney Contemporary's coming up mid-September. You can go there to, you know, 80, 100 galleries under the one roof, and you can walk around with your little notepad and go, oh, I like that gallery, circle, and oh, they're a bit rude, you know, cross them off the list. Really interesting art over there. And then you get to know, and then you can educate yourself, find about the artist. So it's like the career of an artist is a long game. Acquiring and collecting art, either for love or for money, is a long game too. It's a journey, and the longer you spend in it, the more addictive it is. I mean, some of my collectors' houses I go to, you find that they may have a few paintings now, but then they've got like the art library, the books, they just start consuming.
Absolutely.
You know, like there's books as pie, because they're educating themselves. And obviously these are successful professionals in whatever vocation they're in. And it's you know, it's educating.
And these are not trivial objects. They, like we were just talking about before, they can mark time, they represent you know, ways of perceiving the world, and artists are exploring ideas through visual language.
It can just be fun too. Like we could go get a big pink puppy by Jeff Koons and stick it in the front yard. that'd be pretty cool. Cost us a bit, but it's still pretty fun, you know.
Yeah, look, there's plenty of fun and games in the art world. There's
one of those pink puppy dolls would be pretty cool.
It's not all number.
Two, like the gargoyles at the gate, mate. You want a pair of them.
I'm
Marking
sure
enters the estate.
Yeah, I'm sure if one of your artists takes off, you'll be going through the auction catalogues and looking for a maybe a Jeff Koons about this big.
Oh, come on.
It depends on how much you're making, but. Look, James, that's really been great to chat about the Australian, well, not even the Australian art market, just art in general. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in, and I hope you've enjoyed having a chance to have a little chat.
Cheers, Jake.
Thank you, James.
Cheers, buddy.
Excellent. Cheers.